Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the first in-person Family and Children's Overview and Scrutiny Committee of this new administration. My name is Wayne Daly. I'm delighted to have been taken on the responsibility of chairing this very good, very interesting and very challenging committee over the, well, who knows how long for. But what I want to do is just start off today by thanking a few people. So I'd like to thank the former chair, Councillor Mark Swinburne, who is actually sitting here and is now a member, and I'm sure will be a very challenging, vociferous and engaging member on the committee. And also for those members who've served on this committee for some time who are no longer here, thank you for everything that you've done. And for those members who have been on the committee and are back again, you must be a glutton for punishment, but well done and thank you and welcome back. So what I want to do now, if we can, is please just take a look at the agenda. So agenda item number 1 for today is the membership terms of reference. What I thought we would do on this item, because it's normally something which we just canter through, it's a taken, it's a given. What I want to do before we take a presentation from Kath McAvoy-Carr, who's the Executive Director of Adults and Children's Services, I thought this would be a good opportunity for everyone to introduce themselves ahead of us going through the formal agenda. So what I want to do, if I can, is start by going around the room for each member and officers, please, just to give a quick introduction to themselves for everyone's benefit, but also to tell us a little bit about yourself and also what you hope to bring to the committee. So I will start with Guy Renner-Thompson, if I can, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Guy Renner-Thompson. I'm the Cabinet Member, Lead Member for Children's Services and former Chair of this committee.
Okay, thank you, Guy. Councillor Ball.
Morning, I am Councillor Caroline Ball from Ashington Central, and my background is Children and Youth Services, qualified teacher, youth worker, and yeah, and I just hope to bring some energy and fun.
2 words you never normally hear with a scrutiny committee, but let's actually make that happen. Okay, we've got Graham at the back there, Graham Writer.
Good morning, I'm Graham Writer. I'm the Service Director for Children's Social Care. Been in Northumberland for 3 years now in this post. Thank you.
Okay, and Audrey Kingham.
Morning everyone, I'm Audrey Kingham and Service Director for Education and Skills here in Northumberland.
Thank you. Nicola Taylor.
Good morning, I'm Nicola Taylor. I'm Head of Inclusive Education Services at NCC, sitting within Education and Skills.
Sue.
I'm Sue Alliston. I'm Head of School Organisation and Resources for the local authority, basically building things and in charge of money, and help to bring some interesting reports to the committee to receive a scrutiny challenge. Thank you.
You're everyone's best friend when it comes to building schools. Perfect. Paul Rickard.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Paul Rickard. I'm Diocesan Director of Education for the Diocese of Durham and Newcastle. We have scrutiny of over 103 schools across the 2 dioceses, and I'm also CEO of a diocesan trust. I hope to bring real equality and challenge to equality, and hopefully be a voice for those who don't have a voice elsewhere. Thank you, Chair.
Fantastic, Paul. I think I've got Liz Dunn behind you. Yes, sorry.
Good morning, Chair. I'm Liz Dunn and I'm the County Councillor for Linemouth Ward. I've previously worked in a school setting, so I'm very aware of the difficulties that schools face, both not only financially, but also in relation to the staff workload. And as a committee, I think we need to make sure all our Northumberland children and their families get the resources, the opportunities and the support that they need and deserve.
Thank you. Councillor Stewart.
Thank you, Chair. I did have a huge list of things to say there, but everyone else has been more succinct. I'm the County Councillor for Prudhoe South. I've served on the Family and Children's Scrutiny Committee previously, then I moved on to a role for about 8 months. Delighted to be back as the Vice Chair. I've got a history of governance in schools for about 30 years, PTAs, youth work and safeguarding, and this is one of the most important committees there is in the County Council.
Thank you. Kath, I know we're coming to you shortly, but I might as well just say hello to everyone.
Hello, I'm Kath McAvoy. I'm the Exec Director for Adults and Children's Services, and I bring lots of reports that are in my name to this committee for scrutiny.
Councillor Swinburne.
Thank you, Chair, and welcome to your new role in this. And I know your previous experience will be invaluable and make this committee very interesting as well. I'm Councillor Mark Swinburne from the Cramlington Village Ward. I was the Vice Chair of FACS from 2017 and then the Chair from, I think, September of last year. My experience comes as a former school governor, a parent and grandparent. I've worked in both the private and public sector in finance, business management, government projects and benefits, and data analysis and insight. And I know in the email that you sent, and I know Councillor Stewart said he cut his short, but apologies, I'm not going to cut mine short. You said, like, what would you like to achieve? What I want us to achieve is I want the residents of Northumberland to feel confident in the fact that we're striving to provide and delivering the best social care that they need across all areas in a way that meets their needs. I want our residents, our parents and our children to excel in their education and so feel self-assured that they can achieve their potential and have the opportunities and training available for their career, whatever and wherever it may be. And I know already that we've made some significant strides and improvements with this over the past few years. I've also got a question that I want to ask, and I don't know whether I can ask it now or whether I might have an opportunity later on. That's up to you.
We'll take the question later on if that's all right. 'Cause
Okay,
we wanna
thank you.
Move business, yeah. Councillor Thorne.
Hello, my name's Trevor Thorne. I'm County Councillor for Shilbottle. I personally had a great education in Northumberland, primary and secondary. And, you know, my hope is just that we help children achieve their potential and do the very best for them. I'm married to a teacher. I've been on education committees a long time. I'm currently a governor at the RJS and hope to bring best practice from there to here. You know, I've really welcomed the advances that we've made over the past 4 years and hope to be part of that.
Great, welcome. John Sanderson.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, colleagues. My name is John Sanderson. I'm District Secretary of the National Education Union. I've had 35 years in teaching. I did think I'd retired 2 years ago, but my wife had other ideas, so I'm now fully employed in the local secure unit. My experience has largely been in special needs. What I hope to bring is some sanity on union issues and an informed education perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Reverend Lennox.
Good morning, I'm David Lennox. I'm an ordained Baptist minister and represent the three churches in the area. That is predominantly the URC Methodist and Baptist churches, and have been a member of this committee for quite some time. I'm hoping to bring, therefore, a perspective from that point of view. Prior to that, I taught for many years as a head of mathematics and in senior management. And as a statistician in these days, we know that data is important. And as a fellow of the Royal Statistical Society, I keep an eye on the data that comes through from the County Council and hope that we interpret it in the right kind of way. So I hope that these skills are able to be used in the committee that we have here. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
I'm currently a police chaplain at the moment as well.
Thank you very much. And finally, Councillor Taylor. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Christine Taylor. I'm the ward councillor for Bedlington Central. I feel quite inadequate amongst all yous, to be honest. I am a school governor for West End Primary School in Bedlington. Have been for 4 years now and loved every minute of it. I'm also an existing civil servant, worked on Universal Credit, Child Support Agency for a long time. So fully aware of all of the issues and problems that families suffer or undergo with those. Been a member of West Bedlington Town Council for the last 9 years, so get a lot of referrals through the Town Council for families. What I would like to achieve, I would like to increase my knowledge on what we can actually do for the residents. I know the schools, and I know it's already been mentioned about financial challenges for the schools. I would like to see what we can do as a group to help that and help the schools, particularly in my own area, but for the whole of Northumberland, and to try and improve the life for families and children in the wider Northumberland, but particularly in my ward.
Great, thank you very much. Don't feel inadequate, because actually what I'm hearing from everybody is everybody's bringing their own individual skill set, and this is about just contributing to the meeting and challenging, and that very friendly challenge, which we're very used to, but robust challenge. And just finally, just very quickly about me, this meeting is quite unique because we've got two former chairs of FACS here, with Councillor Swinburne and Councillor Guy Renner-Thompson. You've got a former cabinet member for Children's Services and a current cabinet member for Children's Services. So this is the committee to be on. So I'm actually really pleased about that. And one of the other things as well, and thank you for those who responded to the email I sent yesterday, but for many people, at home watching this or catching up later, even within the council, I don't think they realise that this committee, the Scrutiny Committee, is not just made up of elected members, but it's also made up of representatives, like from the diocese, from the church, from trade unions. And we obviously need to do something about getting some parent governors back on this committee as well. And we've had some meetings about how we drive that forward. But for me, my experience comes from running a number of national projects, including those with Save the Children. So, and my passion is around education. So, if we can't actually achieve things here, nobody can. And I am determined that we will achieve things and support Guy and the administration in improving education. And one other thing, very quickly, before we come on to Kath McAvoy-Carr, I am really keen that we don't just stay in County Hall in Morpeth. So I've already set the alarm bells ringing with Chris and with Kath and said that I really want to take this Scrutiny Committee out on the road. I really want to hear where we can go. It might be, and I know Councillor Stewart will automatically put in a pitch for Prudhoe, but I want to hear where we can go, because we've had some fantastic investment in our schools. We've got some fantastic communities in our county, and we should be taking our Scrutiny Committee out there so we actually do engage with our communities. So that is something that we'll be talking to you about pitching up some of our Scrutiny Committees in some of our either schools, colleges, or indeed some of our communities. So that bit over, a bit longer than planned, but I thought really important. So you've all got a good depth and breadth of the experience you're going to bring. We're now going to move on to the most important person on this committee, who brings every report in her name. I was going to say councillor there, you're not. Kath McAvoy-Carr, I don't want to insult you. Kath McAvoy-Carr, who's the Executive Director of Adults and Children's Services, with an overview of what the responsibility of this committee is and what it is we can do. So over to you, Kath.
Thanks, Councillor Daly. Just very quickly, this was Wayne asked me to do this just so we could I could provide new members with an overview of what Children's Services is, because sometimes we think it's about just about education, or sometimes people think it's about just about social care. So it's some information for new members. It's a reminder for, I was going to say old members, I mean less new members. Sorry about that. And if anybody's got any questions or any issues they want to raise separately with me in relation to this, then please don't hesitate to either pick up the phone or drop me a line or come and see me in person. So just very, very quickly. Oh, as if by magic. It didn't work on Tuesday. Very quickly, how did Children's Services come into being? How did it stop from being adult services, adult social care and children's social care? I'm sure most of you remember the very tragic death of Victoria Columbier and the Lord Laming inquiry that took place following that, which then introduced the Children Act 2004. And under section 18.2, that dismantled traditional social services. So previously it was just about social services and there was a director of social services. And we merged, or every authority statutorily had to merge children's social care with education and create a children's services department. And the theory behind that was that it would be somebody who was... that there would be a director that was responsible for the safety and well-being of all children in the council area. that directorate would then discharge the functions of education and children's services along with the lead member for children's services, just to remind Guy there. It is a statutory role. The director of children's services is a statutory role. Sometimes they are sometimes there are other roles. So for instance, I also have adult services again, which is a statutory role, but sometimes it is just a singular role that covers the safety and educational, social and emotional needs of children and young people, and that has to be central to the local vision. So lots of what you were saying there, Councillor Daly, was very pertinent. For those who don't know, just a very quick reminder of the data that surrounds Northumberland. We've got almost 60,000 children under the age of 18, 45,500 pupils attending school. And of that, 11.5% of our children have special education needs support, and 3.9% have that formalised under an education, health and care plan. We have 660 early help plans, so that's children who are being worked with, or children and families who are being worked with via early help services, so children's centres and early help workers. We have 836 children in need plans, which are children who've been statutorily assessed as needing some support from a social worker. We've got 337 child protection plans. That's children who have been recognised as having some safeguarding issues and need to have a formal plan to formalise how we're going to manage their safety. And 436 children who are seen to be looked after. That is, we are their corporate parent as a result of that. Now, those figures are subject to change, and I can already hear Graham in the corner going, we haven't got 436 children, we've got less than 430. But those numbers are subject to change on a weekly or a daily basis, actually. In relation to schools, we have 164 schools, 49 of which are academies, which actually, in comparison to some local areas, is only a third, is not actually as high as some areas. So some areas have a much higher percentage of children who are subject to, or who have attended an academy. We have 121. Well, as most of you will know, we've got a mixed economy in terms of our structure of our education. So we've got 121 first and primary schools, we've got 17 middle schools, and we've got 16 high schools, 9 special schools, 1 PRU, 1 college, and a partridge in a pear tree. Sorry, I couldn't resist that. And then we have obviously some significant alternative education offers as well across the county. So education is not just about our schools. We do have a structure or significant teams of people behind the education supporting our schools in terms of school admissions, school transport, school organisation, which Sue's here as a result of that. We have our schools are subject to fairly significant regulation. So 91% of our primary schools are classed as being good or outstanding by Ofsted, and 63% of our middle and high schools are classed as good or outstanding. And just to advise that we are, the North East as a whole is subject to a programme called Opportunity North East, which is targeted interventions and support being provided by the DFE to help improve the outcomes of our children across the North East on the whole. So I think I know 4 of our schools are involved directly in that programme, and then other schools are benefiting from some of the targeted interventions that are being offered across maths and new teaching support frameworks. In terms of children's social care, we have something that is called the Front Door, and the Multi-Agency Safeguarding Hub is the MASH. That's where all of the new referrals go to, and they're based at Foundry House in Bedlington. We have 4 locality teams based in Berwick, Hexham, Bedlington and Blythe, which cover all of the areas across the system. We've got a disabled children's team. I think that probably speaks for itself, but we have widened the criteria for our disabled children's team so that they can work with more children who have additional needs. We have a fostering service which provides all of our foster carers, but who also support children who are subject to a special guardianship order and perhaps live with relatives or friends in a less formal way or a more formal way. We have an adolescent service which houses our youth offending service, which supports our youth offending service, our youth service, our care leavers team, our drug and alcohol service for children and young people, amongst other things. We have 3 children's homes, internal children's homes, so 3 of our own homes, which are all rated good or outstanding. We have a short break care unit, which is based in Alnwick. We have a secure unit, which doesn't just have our children or young people placed in there. That's a nationally accessed secure unit. And our adoption service is run via Adopt North East, which is a regional adoption agency which came into being a couple of years ago. I think it's probably fair to say that Children's Services is the most highly regulated of all of the services within the council. So we have a high number of inspections, and on occasions you'll think it can't possibly be Ofsted visiting again. We often feel like that, but they do come and visit us very often. So all of our children's homes are inspected twice a year. Our youth offending service is also inspected, and their inspection is due, so we are imminently waiting for that. Obviously, our schools are all inspected on a very regular basis, and that continued through COVID, although those were themed and targeted inspections. We have something called the Inspection of Local Authority Children's Services, which is an ILAC, which happens every 3 years. Ours, thankfully, took place last year, and we were very pleased with the outcome of that. As part of that ILAC process, though, we will be visited every year by Ofsted to do focus visits, and they will pick a theme. We have an annual conversation with Ofsted, and sometimes we can influence what that theme might look like. There are other things called joint targeted area inspections, which I forgot to put on the list, which we had one of those 2 years ago. It will be unlikely that we will get another one of those, or I would hope very much that we don't get another one of those. And we also have inspections of our special education needs and disability services. So it is very, very highly regulated. So that's all I had to say this morning. I don't know if anybody has got any immediate questions. If not, I'm happy to move on.
Does anyone have any questions on that very comprehensive overview from Kath there? No? Oh, Councillor Swinburne.
Kath, I'm just conscious that you mentioned a PRU, and for the new members, they might not know what a PRU refers to.
That's pupil referral unit, and that's where children may need some alternative provision because they've been excluded from the school that they are currently at.
So thank you for that. I think you'll agree there's lots for us there to be looking at and lots that we can look into. The good news is we've got a fantastic team of officers who are sitting behind this. So good. Right, let's move on to the agenda proper now that we've had that overview. So if I can just introduce Chris Angus here. Chris is the scrutiny officer for the committee. So if you need anything, go to Chris. Day or night, doesn't matter. You contact him. Right, Chris, do we have any apologies for absence? Oh, sorry.
Thanks. Yeah, we've got apologies from Councillor Scott, Alan Hodgson and Lynn Houghton.
Thank you. They're noted. Right, we then need to move on to the minutes of the previous meeting, which was held on the 1st of April 2021. And only those members who were present at that meeting can actually move them as a true and accurate record. So, Councillor Swinburne, are you moving them? Yeah, so I'll second them. So, yeah, good. Nice and simple. Then we move on to now disclosures of members' interest. Just to explain, every elected member will have filled in a disclosure of members' interest when they signed their acceptance of office. They're standing. But declarations of interest relate to items on the agenda today. So does anyone have any declarations which they need to disclose ahead of us proceeding with the meeting? That's a no. Okay, so no disclosures. We are now moving on to the forward plan of key decisions, which is going to be taken by Chris Angus here.
Thanks. So the forward plan of key decisions is a document that shows the decisions that the Cabinet will be making over the coming months. This one is for June until September. It's an opportunity for members to identify anything that they might want to come to the committee for scrutiny if it's not already on the work programme. There's nothing on the forward plan at the moment that members that would fall within the committee's terms of reference. So it's just a note at the moment.
Thank you for that, Chris. If we now move on to item number 6 on your agenda papers, and that is the summary of the County Council's approaches to meeting the needs of SEND learners during the COVID pandemic, and it covers the period March 2020 to March 2021. And Nicola Taylor, you're going to be taking that presentation for us.
Thank you, Councillor Daly. I haven't got a presentation, so I'm just going to pick out key points from the report and then happy to take questions at the end if appropriate. So needless to say, I think everyone gathered will have a good understanding that the period of the pandemic has brought lots of challenges for many people, children, families in Northumberland, no exception. And I think that we've all been very sighted within our line of work on the needs of the most vulnerable in particular. In terms of the role of the local authority through this period, in summary, we've sought all the way through to seek assurance from our schools around their complying with national guidance, which was changing frequently. We were seeking assurance regarding the welfare of our children and young people with SEND, and trying to ensure a level of service also to those children and young people. And our response really throughout the period has been informed where we could have it done so by the voice of children, young people and families themselves. We've really had an obligation to continue with our statutory processes through the entire period, although there were easements granted through law, and we wanted to support our schools to ensure the attendance of the most vulnerable. So we'll now move through the different phases of the pandemic, as I've tried to do in the report, set it out into 3 phases, because that's how it's felt. So in terms of an overview, the overall impact on statutory process has been very limited, actually. We've managed to continue with our assessments of education and healthcare needs in a timely way throughout the whole period. We adopted business as usual pretty much straight away with our SEN monitoring and assessment team, very quickly picking up the remote working. We had an issue in the first block of the pandemic around around the difficulties our educational psychologists had, who are key to the EHC needs assessments, in actually writing comprehensive advice when not able to see children. So that had caused some timeliness issues, but what I'm pleased to say is that our SEN team internally have always managed to make up the ground. So we've completed most of our EHCPs around 90% on time throughout the period, which is quite an achievement. The post-16 panel continued to meet weekly online, so in terms of making provision for youngsters as they moved through, that's all gone smoothly. And mediation with parents has continued with an online offer, and first-tier tribunals also continued after a short period when they were suspended. They've picked up the pace again. And I just have included all the way through the report comments that we've had from parents and carers throughout. So if we move into the first period, March to July 2020, the kind of first lockdown, schools were open for vulnerable children and young people. That was made very clear at the outset, and to those of key workers. And I think it's true to say that the government guidance was being issued on a daily basis as things were rapidly changing. Most of our schools throughout this period had only a small proportion of learners attending, and our schools were supported very well by the health and safety team here in terms of risk assessments for those pupils and making sure that the buildings and staff were COVID safe and secure, and also from education skills staff centrally. So head teachers were receiving daily updates from the director and coming to a weekly meeting. So we were able to also weave the SEND message through all of those communications. By the end of the second week of lockdown, we had a process in place whereby we were requesting all schools who made provision for our EHCP learners to complete monitoring forms. So from very early on, we were able to see where our learners were attending school. So we were monitoring that, and we were also trying to understand the reasons behind non-attendance if they weren't attending. Often it was parental choice, but at times there was some challenge provided to schools around that offer. And that work involved data and performance strategic leaders of SEN and also the virtual school who work with looked after children. As I say, that allowed us a really good insight into where we needed to provide support and challenge even at that point. And we were also able to start to discuss with schools openly about the risk assessment process, because if youngsters weren't attending, we also needed a risk assessment in place to ensure that they were safe and not exposed to additional vulnerabilities by being at home more. And SENCOs were issued with guidance on the responsibilities as laid out in the government directives. So the risk assessment process, we set up a Northumberland pro forma, which we issued to all of our schools and also circulated to our out of area provisions, along with a guidance document as to how we felt that it should be completed. And it very much had discussions with parents, carers and social work staff, if appropriate and involved, to ensure that all bases were covered. So there was a real understanding of anything additional that was going to be needed for the family if the youngster wasn't able to attend school. We took samples, of the risk assessments on a weekly basis. So we were spot checking almost to ensure that we were unable to check all of them, but we were spot checking to make sure that, that the process was being followed across the piece over that period. Simultaneously, we had a bank of our central staff, obviously, who were adjusting to working at home. So these are the staff, the specialist staff who belong to the Northumberland Inclusive Education Service. And we worked very quickly with trade unions and with the health and safety team to establish COVID secure working arrangements for our outreach staff, which meant that we were able to provide some direct support to youngsters who were able to attend school, whose families, the risk assessment determined that they should be in school, and the families wanted them to be in school, but schools were perhaps concerned about meeting needs. So we had some of our frontline staff out deployed pretty quickly, and we had 22 learners attending during that period who wouldn't have been able to attend if we hadn't had support going into school. Additionally, lots of those staff also volunteered to be out on the front line, supporting schools where they had staffing issues. So they were trying to stay open, but actually their staff were being affected by coronavirus infection, and they were worried that they wouldn't be able to open. So we were supporting school staffing in that way. Preschool services, so portage and sensory support for preschool children with additional needs, assumed a virtual offer, so they maintained regular contact with families through that period, albeit virtually. The statutory processes continued, and yeah, we didn't have any real impact on timeliness at that time. So it was good. The SEND commissioning panel continued throughout, operating virtually. So we were processing needs assessments as they came in a timely way. And annual reviews of EHCPs, we supported schools with guidance and an instruction that those should go ahead. There was no need for them to pause if the family were confident and able to participate virtually. Our teams also prepared a virtual offer of training and resources, so we were able to continue supporting schools around the different areas of primary need. So there were resources being put together to support remote contact and learning for youngsters that weren't in school. So that was very well received by schools, and we delivered a SENCO conference virtually. Communications with the SENCO community continued really well, very robustly, weekly emails with updated guidance, reminding them of their responsibilities.
Nicola, can I just jump in there? Because again, it's the acronyms that we're probably used to.
Sorry.
But in terms of SENCOs, that's special education needs coordinators within schools.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're the kind of teachers who take on that additional role, but that's what that relates to.
Yes, yeah, apologies, yeah. Over this period as well, our Social Care First Contact team made 1,000 proactive phone calls to families who had recently been closed to social care, either social work teams or early help family work teams, in order to, or in recognition that some of those families may be a little vulnerable and experiencing very different situations with their youngsters not in school. So that was very good, and from that came some referrals into different services to support them. We wrote, constructed and circulated a COVID survey also at that time. That was July, issued or invitations to all families across Northumberland who have a learner with SEND to tell us about their experience so far of the pandemic and the impact of it on themselves and their families. And as we've moved forward through the planning for the next 2 phases and onward planning, we keep referring back to the recommendations from that COVID survey and what families were telling us. So the various actions from that have been included in the SEND overall work streams moving forward strategically. So we also, towards the end of that period, were beginning to plan for reopening because we knew that schools were going to be expected to be fully open in September. So we took sight and notice of the reopening plans for our specialist provisions in particular, including those outside Northumberland, so that as a local authority we had assurance that our EHCP learners would be able to access an offer from September onwards. And we started to set up the pop-up hub, which has been described in a previous report to FACS, part of the mental health support work that we've undertaken, a multi-agency hub whereby schools, where there were concerns about learners coming into school, having had a period of outside school, where they were worried about COVID anxiety specifically, they would be referred into a multi-agency group, and we were able to direct those referrals onwards internally. So from September to December, we had the pop-up hub in operation, and within the report, you've got an indication there of the numbers of young people that we saw come through the panel. And the direction that they were referred on to. So it was, at the time, a really impactful piece of work. And schools, again, have commented on the success of it and how useful it's been. At that time, schools were still needing to support with risk assessments learners who weren't in school, and there were learners not in school who hadn't returned for various reasons, were struggling to return, family anxiety about return. And also schools were having to close bubbles through that period. So it was very important that our schools understood that there was an expectation that if learners weren't in school, that there was some provision being made for them. The training offer for SENCOs was redesigned and has been delivered virtually through that period. So we had a very active return to training uptake, which has been part of our SEND strategy for the last 2 to 3 years. So it was really good to have that underway. And it has to be said that the attendance at the virtual training throughout this last year has been better than face-to-face. So that's definitely going to be part of our offer moving forward. The NICE teams returned to school visits where safe to do so, each one risk assessed beforehand so that we were sure that our staff were safe, but also that schools were in the position to accommodate us and to take the advice face to face. But we also had a virtual offer if that wasn't suitable. Guidance was provided for our families related to safe online learning practice when engaging with our teams, so that added some assurance around safeguarding. And the school improvement partners, as they were doing their work through the autumn term, were asking the question about the impact of the pandemic on the SEN cohorts within their schools. So again, we had another line of inquiry into school SEN provision. At this time, one of the key strands of the COVID survey had discussed and highlighted the kind of concern around mental well-being, emotional well-being when children return to school. And we were pleased in the autumn term to be able to use the government-funded Wellbeing for Education Return grant to set up a training offer for the senior mental health leads in schools to permeate the school with training around spotting the early warning signs and a really good understanding of signposting children on to appropriate services when necessary. So that started to take shape in September, October time when we received the grant, and we had a conference delivered at the end of November, and the training continues with that. So a number of schools did attend that first training session, but we followed up through the spring term to make sure every school has access to the training materials. So then, and we thought we were coming back in January to schools being open, but very quickly we realised that wasn't going to be the case. So we kind of stepped up again in terms of the monitoring. So this time round, we had school attendance at schools within Northumberland monitored daily via returns to the local authority. So we had daily information around the attendance of our pupils with EHCP provisions. I have to say we were really pleased because through that period our attendance of those learners exceeded the national benchmarks in all but 1 week and showed an upward trend, so each week there were more and more children going into school. We had a weekly multi-agency meeting to take action looking at the returns from there. So sometimes it was around a school improvement lead piece of work. Other times because we also sought assurance around risk assessments, etc., and around the school's confidence in delivering the full curriculum online to learners with SEN. So where we were picking up that wasn't in place or SENCOs weren't feeling particularly confident about that, we were offering support groups with other SENCOs, so peer-to-peer support, but also some direction from council officers. That was partly came out of the COVID survey again earlier in the year, which had told us that families felt sometimes the communication with schools wasn't great. So we really needed to push that this time, and we did. We continue to monitor the learners who were referred into the pop-up hub. In addition, there were 90 learners, and we wanted to really make sure that those 90 were monitored through this spring term to check that they were actually getting back into school. And of those, at the end of the period, 65 had successfully returned to school and had an average attendance of 75% from very low starting points. So that was an effective piece of work. And the remaining children did have plans around them to build back up to full attendance. The Wellbeing for Education Return training packages continued and are now available to all schools to access via a Padlet, but we do offer also in-person support if they want help cascading. We launched our BU website in January, which describes the Northumberland graduated approach to social emotional health. And that has portals for parents and carers, young people and professionals. And that means that everyone has a much better, easier access to the information they need if they're concerned about any children and young people. And over the final block of time, the Education Welfare Service supported 708 requests from designated safeguarding leads in schools and other professionals. So those staff were contacting families where there were concerns about attendance. So again, where sometimes the attendance was affected by families' anxieties rather than children's themselves. And yeah, key to that is that lots of things we did we felt assured that individual stories were being heard and understood. We had also feedback and different queries come in from individual families through the course of the pandemic, which I think were dealt with in a multi-agency way and hopefully towards resolution. Then there's a section in here at the back of the report which came from our colleagues in the CCG, which just gives an overview of the health activity during the pandemic. I would say in summary around that there was some disruption to the delivery of therapies because of the face-to-face contact early on in the pandemic. But quite quickly, the delivery of occupational therapy and speech and language therapy, the teams there set up virtual offers using new digital approaches, and they were triaging referrals that came in. This also applied to mental health services, so the primary mental health work team and SIPs were offering very quickly an attend anywhere system so that their face-to-face consultations with children and families could take place remotely, but in consultation over virtual means. So that's the year in summary, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Nicola, for that very comprehensive report, which was actually requested by this committee. Before I take questions from members, can I just go to portfolio holder Guy Renner-Thompson?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the committee for requesting this report. It's it's been a very fascinating read. We knew at the very start of the pandemic that it would impact all children, but the impact on SEN children would be higher, both educationally and mentally. A lot of these children have certain needs. They're in a certain routine. If that routine starts to change, then certain issues can come. So we were clear from the start that the SEN children were a priority for the council, and we had to do everything we could to mitigate the impact of the pandemic on their learning and their physical and mental state. And I think this report shows just how much work went into doing that. And I think this report shows that we were, on the whole, very successful in doing that. And I think the staff team have worked incredibly hard over the 3 lockdowns and the whole pandemic to make sure we get the best results for not just our SEN children, all our children, but in this case, our SEN children. So I won't go through the detail of the report because we've just had a fantastic summary of the report, but happy to take questions as well.
Thank you, Guy. Right, so I now go to questions from members of the committee. Paul Rickard.
I think, Chair, if I might just echo some of the comments there about the fact that I do think staff have worked incredibly hard. I think one question is that on the back of this, we've seen in our schools a rising need for special needs support now, particularly as we come out to a different normal, shall we describe it? And I guess my question is, are the authority geared up now? Are the staff in place ready to be able to respond to this? Because I think there has been a fantastic bit of work done over this period. I don't think anyone can deny that. But it's almost how do you future-proof a system that I suspect might be creaking, which it will be in a lot of local authorities in the North East. And I think from my perspective, as I look across a range of schools, small, large, medium, what can be done now to make sure that those needs of those particularly vulnerable children aren't overlooked? Because clearly during the pandemic, the local authorities done a great job. It's just how do we future-proof that kind of bump that we're going to have on the road now?
So, Nicola, do you want to take that one?
Yes, I'll start. Maybe Kath and Audrey will want to make comments also, but I would say, Paul, you're absolutely right. What we're seeing since March is an increase in demand for services, and in particular a demand for the services around autism support and emotional wellbeing and behaviour. So the services, you may be aware, became free at the point of delivery in September last year as a result of some working up with schools around what the system needed moving forward and in order to improve equity. And I think that stands us in good stead moving forward, because access to the services as they stand doesn't rely on the school budgets. It relies on actually young people being referred in. So that's the first and really important point. Secondly, we are taking measures right now to build capacity within autism support and emotional wellbeing and behaviour. So we've got both short-term measures underway with capacity quickly building in autism support, and we've got medium to long-term plans also to enhance capacity there. In terms of the statutory assessment requests, they are coming in very thick and fast. So again, we're looking at capacity within our SEN monitoring and assessment team. I think that it will be a challenge moving forward to make sure that we continue to process requests in a timely way. So that is something we need to consider as we move into the next period.
Yeah, just really to reinforce what Nicola's saying there, it is obviously in almost all of our service areas that we work with, not just within education, although this obviously is related specifically to education. We are seeing an increase in demand for our services. So it is something that strategically we are going to have a look at, because there's no easy answers to these queries. But I think it would be fair to say that we've developed, or we are continuing to develop our working relationship with our clinical commissioning group, and as that changes into the ICS, we have got a better understanding or a better ability to be able to potentially predict some of that need and change the resources that we have to meet those needs as we see them moving forward. But it is a challenge. I can't say it's an easy job, and I wouldn't want anybody to think that there are any easy answers to this, but we will continue to try and adapt the resources that we have within the limits of the resources that we have to try and meet the needs of the children of Northumberland.
If I can also bring in Audrey Kingham, Director of Education as well.
Thank you, Chair. Just to follow on from both Nicola and Kath, actually, but
we have recognised immediate needs and short and medium term needs. Actually, the task in hand is how quickly do we get that resource into source to be able to help. So Nicola and the team have worked and come up with some really innovative approaches, but they particularly start with schools and working with our schools around their expertise. That's the quickest way that we can enhance the local authority offer and team base to be able to expand and meet the demand currently. So from next Monday, we will have a number of colleagues from schools who will be seconded into the service to work with us and enhance and, if you like, deepen and add breadth to our service. And that's brilliant, because actually that further strengthens the work and recognises the expertise out in our schools. We also have some more medium-term plans, and that will be going out to add capacity into that. And I think to give the Scrutiny Committee some assurance, this is something that's a really dynamic discussion for us as a team. You know, we are perhaps not quite daily, but certainly weekly, having these reviews and discussions and understanding through the requests that come into us and the challenges. Discussions with our head teachers continue weekly, and we understand those challenges. So we have a task to respond very, very quickly. And I would just like to assure the committee that that's something that won't dissipate in any way, shape or form.
Do I have any further questions? Councillor Swinburne, and then Councillor Lennox after that.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Nicola, for bringing this report. As we've seen with previous reports to this committee, this again shows the way our services have adapted flexibly, and all the staff involved with that to a difficult situation to provide the support required, not just being reactive but proactive too. Seeing the likes of the attendance results exceeding national benchmarks, the success of the pop-up hubs, etc. What is concerning, obviously, page 18, 19, is the health activity and outcomes, and the information on there on mental disorders and the effects that that's having. And I know that even in the last committee that we had a report with regards to mental health information, but there's no getting away from those results, that information on there about, among 11 to 16-year-old girls, a probable mental health disorder, where they'd seen or heard an argument among adults in the household, and, the effects. It's very concerning when you see that sort of information. But I do have a couple of questions. On page 18, where we see about monitoring of learners referred into the pop-up hub, and it mentions about, the 2/3 of attendance, etc. And I was just wondering if we knew what had happened to the other 1/3 that hadn't attended, if we had any information about what had happened to them. And the other question I had is, and I know we don't know what things are going to look like, as we move out of COVID, but if things happened, and I know they're not, but happened to return to as they were pre-COVID, everything went back to what was previously known as normal. Would the service return back to what it was then? Or have we learnt and changed and improved and are keeping things as a result of that? Have we changed and improved our offering and our service and reacted and keeping things in place as a result? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Swinburne. In answer to the first question, the learners who aren't yet attending school fully are monitored really closely by the education welfare team. So, and their tracking of them is really comprehensive, so they know who those learners are, and they're in constant contact with the schools and the families to understand and build the attendance back up. So yes, we would be able to provide assurance that the learners who aren't yet attending school are being monitored. And if there are additional services required to support them getting back in at any point in their journey back to full-time school, then they would be referred through education welfare to the relevant services. In terms of moving forward, and if things were ever to go back to how they were, which is just almost impossible to think of, isn't it? Indeed, there are things that we would keep. So our virtual offer, certainly around training, will remain because attendance is good. I can give you an example of us running some sessions for class teachers for early identification and intervention around social communication needs, cognition and learning in the classrooms. And those sessions, we ran 4 of them, and they had over 300 attendees at each one. So we would never have got that face-to-face, and it did mean that schools could send all of their staff to attend the training. So in terms of our reach into schools and into classes where teachers are responsible for meeting need, it's unprecedented and really positive. So that will remain. I think that we will probably retain an element of support for learners virtually, but some aspects of our work are challenging with individual learners remotely because it relies on observation of children within the context that they're learning. So it won't be a full virtual offer in terms of support, but certainly the virtual training will continue.
Thank you very much. I've got Reverend Lennox and then I've got Councillor Ball.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to commend the County Council for the work that they're doing in this context, particularly in relation to the mental health issues. We all know that COVID has caused a great deal of difficulty in that particular area. I'm aware of it from a church point of view. I've got a daughter-in-law who's a clinical psychologist, and I'm also aware as a police chaplain the pressures that are on society in this sort of way. So it's really good to see that these issues are being addressed in this particular way, and I would commend this report as a result. Thank you.
Councillor Ball.
Thanks, Chair. So firstly, I just want to say thank you to all the teachers and support staff during what's been a very difficult time, and that they've went beyond the call of duty on many occasions. With regards to the report, thank you. It's very comprehensive, and obviously it is very positive, the feedback and everything that is in there. One question I do have is any negative feedback that's come in from parents and teachers during the time. Could we see some of them comments? Also a review of any issues during this time and the learning that's going to come from that long term. And the other question I do have is, what is the current waiting times to receive mental health support in Northumberland? Thank you.
So through the result of the mental health trailblazer activity, Councillor Ball, the current waiting times for primary mental health and SIPs are at around 4 weeks. So radically reduced from 2 years ago. And those are the experiences we hear that from children and families. The referral times into school health are longer, but we've referred to short and medium term activity. We're working with our partners in the CCG to try and find solutions to that sort of stickiness in the system, so that access to school health is also kind of eased. But we're looking at options with the voluntary sector and commissioning out some pieces of work with them. So the wait times into structured services are as described. The wait times into our emotional wellbeing behaviour team, who are run by NCC with specialist teachers. We're currently have been able to keep the referrals open. At one point we were concerned that we might have to close those lists because of the demand, but we have, through various means, been able to keep them open till the end of term, so that's positive. And they're a responsive team who normally try and get out to children within two to 3 weeks at the latest. The COVID survey is a really good insight into the lived experiences, and there are, you refer to negative comments, there are some very honest comments within that, and that is widely available on the local offer for everyone to read. So I would direct you to that. Have I covered all your comments, your questions?
Yes, I think so. Can I just quickly come back with regards to the 4 weeks? Is that just 4 weeks to a triage, or is it a long-term plan in place?
4 weeks to treatment. Yeah.
Fabulous. Thank you.
I would like to bring in Kath McAvoy-Carr if I can, please. Thank you.
Thanks very much. A really challenging question, and I really appreciate that. We have got a number of opportunities for children and young people to seek emotional support at a number of different levels. So I understand the concern around the SIPS referrals and about how they are managed. But what we've tried to do within Northumberland is offer a number of different opportunities to be able to access support at a lower level in order to be able to manage the access into the higher level resources. And again, I think as a local authority, or sorry, as a local area, we have developed a significant amount of services. We could always have more, don't get me wrong, and I think we are in a slightly better position than a number of our colleagues in different areas. But we are always looking to see what else we can do in order to support. We talk a lot about mental health issues, but we need to understand the pathway around that as to determine whether or not it's an emotional resilience issue, a behavioural presentation, or whether it is an absolute mental health issue. And I have a daughter who's a mental health nurse, and she talks to me about that all the time when she says professionals referring it's not a mental health issue, it's a behavioural issue. So we are trying to work with that. We're trying to look at alternative methods of involving mental health services with our frontline services in order to be able to understand those challenges and those pathways much more strongly, particularly for some of our children who are involved with statutory services around that. In relation to the issue about the SEND survey, I think Nicola advised that it is on our local offer. We are absolutely more than in the interest of transparency. If you wanted an overview of that, we've got several reports that have been through various systems that we would be able to access that. We can also get you a copy of the last report that came here around mental health, if that would be, or actually it'll be online if you wanted to access that report. So that we've got lots of information if you might need that moving forward.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions? Can't see any. Right. So we've had a fairly comprehensive debate there. Just a couple of things. First of all, I think we've got to echo what I think has been said pretty much by everyone. The huge amount of debt and gratitude that we owe not just to our council staff here, who have been fantastic, but also to our teaching workforce and the support teams who sit within our schools, and not forgetting the parents as well, who've now suddenly discovered what it's like to be a teacher. And I think, we need to recognise the huge amount of work, because I do recall back in 2020 when the pandemic, the notice to close schools came through. We had very, very little notice, and every single one of our staff and our teaching workforce and the support workforce absolutely stepped up to the plate to make that happen. And I think sometimes that's forgotten. And one of the final things, you will be aware that there is a public inquiry on COVID, which is going to be happening. And I do know that as a local authority, we will be presenting evidence. And I think this is a very good piece of evidence about the positive impact that a local authority and its partners can actually have during this pandemic. So I would hope that that would be included. So there are two recommendations on the report, which is on page 9. One is to note the content of the report, which I think we've pretty much done. And the other one is to recognise the support given over this period, which again I think we've done, and to identify any potential issues for further consideration. What I'd like to propose, given the fact that this is obviously an ongoing piece of work, Councillor Ball's referenced a few items there, is that we get a further update on this in perhaps October, if that's all right. And then that would give us an opportunity to review how this work is progressing, and more importantly, any help or support that this committee or members could bring. I want to call everybody councillor today. You are not a councillor. Kath McAvoy-Carr.
Just also as a reminder, we did have a revisit by Ofsted and CQC in relation to our SEND written statement of action, and that report will also be coming back, which will also identify some of the areas of development around this specific SEND issues. So we'll be bringing that once we have that formally reported to us.
Okay, with those points noted, and that Kath McAvoy-Carr is not a councillor, if I say that again, I'll put £5 in a charity tin. Okay, we note the report. Can I just have a show of hands in agreement to progress? Yeah, that's fine. Thank you very much. We're now moving on to item number 7 on the report, which is Winter Support Grant Update, which I believe has been taken by Sue Everson.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Daly. The report in front of you today is at the request of Fact Scrutiny Committee. We did an original update in February earlier on in the year as to how the grant was issued and the uptake during the Christmas period. As a result of that, we were asked to provide a further report on the outcomes of the winter support grant for the February half term and Easter holidays. So the detail within the report sets out, and to remind everybody that we did receive £992,000 from central government in order to support families and individuals in Northumberland, particularly those children and families of that have free school meals, as well as the wider support for residents and our communities. What we have done during the February half term and Easter is build really on those experiences that we reported to you in February, based on what we'd done at Christmas, and what we decided to do was to continue to distribute the grant in the 3 ways that we had previously done, through a centrally managed voucher system managed by the County Council through HUG. Schools themselves had already got existing processes in place, alternative voucher systems, hot meals, delivery services, as well as food parcels. So a number of schools continue to do what we called their local arrangements. We also offered a third way, which was co-op gift cards for those families living in more rural areas that didn't have access to the larger supermarkets. Because of the success at Christmas, as I said, we decided to take that forward again through to the holidays. So what you can see on page 2 of the report, which I think is page 26 in the overall set of papers, is that shows the values and uptake of the voucher scheme, both for both of the holiday periods. So for February half term, which was obviously just 1 week, we issued over £197,000 worth of vouchers, and again a really good uptake of 92% of those vouchers were actually redeemed, so very much in line with what we experienced during the Christmas period. For the Easter holidays, so again you'll be aware that's 2 weeks, so again the uptake there was around £300,000 worth of vouchers. Again, that the period, the uptake was slightly less at 88%, but because of the terms of the grant, we did need to make the redemption periods shorter, because it needed to fit in time with the reporting period back to the grant. So that might have had some impact on families having taken up the uptake. So again, just to report overall, that was £445,000 that was actually issued across the 2 holiday periods again. And as you can see from the pie charts on page 2 and 3 of the report, Asda continues to be the most popular supermarket for redeeming the vouchers, very much in line with what we experienced at Christmas. Also, so that is the centrally run voucher scheme. Obviously the local scheme run by schools themselves, a further £224,000 was issued directly to schools to run their own individual programmes and schemes for their families and young people. What the grant also allowed was for additional support for families in terms of fuel poverty. So again, for Easter and for February half term, a further £144,000 were also distributed to families to support that, and that was done through our Northumberland Communities Together team, through direct support through that team. So another great success building on the work that was done at Christmas, and to say that, again, total amount £815,000 was actually distributed across all families and children during that period of time. As we've said, the grant actually ran out at the end of the financial year, but the regulations did allow for local authorities to use our COVID local support grant moving forward to support the scheme, the continuation of the scheme. So the local authority made the decision to use that funding for the May half term as well. So further vouchers and local arrangements continued for May half term as well. Actually, I haven't got the data yet because the vouchers are still live for another week yet. But we did issue £20 per pupil per week for for that week. Again, that's £5 more than was issued during the lockdown as part of the national scheme. So again, increased amounts issued by the local authority to families. The report also covers the Holiday Activity Fund, and again further grant funding that the local authority received to run holiday activity programmes, which are free activities that were run at Easter, summer and Christmas. So the aim of the programme is to provide free places available for the equivalent of 4 hours a day, 4 days a week for 6 weeks of the year, encompassing those three holiday periods from school. The programme is overseen in Northumberland by a strategic group made up of Northumberland communities together, the early help team based in our children's social care, members of our community and voluntary sector, education colleagues and those in inclusion teams as well. So the group of people have been working together to coordinate the activities within the 2021 programme on behalf of the council. And table 4 on your, the tables on page 4 of the report shows the number of holiday clubs that were run during the Easter holiday period, as well as the number of children that actually took part. So overall, you can see there was 1,372 children that actually participated in the programme over the Easter period, and a total of 1,482 places were offered to children and young people in Northumberland. Again, equating to some big numbers of over 5,704 hours of fun across 22 provisions that were offered in challenging circumstances, obviously operating under COVID restrictions. On top of the free activities that were run at various places across the county, there were also additional activities organised in terms of community pop-up provisions that were organised across Ashington and Choppington. There was also a distribution of over 420 Easter eggs during in those pop-up events, as well as a lot of focus on food during the holiday scheme as well. So lots of the children that turned up to the activities were provided with breakfast, hot lunches, and a lot of that again came from the community with surplus food donations by local supermarkets in order to ensure that the grant went as far as it possibly could. Normally you would have heard that part with probably a lot more enthusiasm than I can give from Emma Walker, our senior manager in poverty. But unfortunately Emma's away today making the activities happen for the summer programme, which again is a very, very challenging programme with activities from Berwick in the north through to Hexham and Haltwhistle in the west. So again, a massive programme of activity for this summer. So I'm sure we will have a bigger and better event than we've ever had in Northumberland previously.
Thank you, Sue. That was a very good report. Don't undersell yourself. If I can bring in Guy Renner-Thompson, then I'll go to questions from the committee.
Thank you, Chair. Sue's taken us through the report very well, showing how good an uptake we had. I mean, we didn't come to this not knowing what we were doing. We had our money. We were given our money from the government, but we'd already done a significant amount of legwork to get our own voucher scheme set up, if you'll remember, previous to the winter support grant coming in. The HUG system is incredibly good, and it's free to us to use. Other systems that were looked at, they would take a percentage of the money that was spent, so hence the HUG system was gone for. Myself, the leader of the council and the cabinet were very keen that we went for a voucher system, and that was vindicated in the end. If you remember, there was some criticism of food parcels that went out in some of our neighbouring authorities who chose to go down that route, but the size and complexity of Northumberland, we were aware, and as officers were aware, that a voucher system would be much easier to handle for the recipients of those meals. So it's been a very successful couple of holidays. Of course, the report also doesn't mention that in February we doubled the amount of money from £15 a head to £30 a head because we had that additional spend, which we were able to help families with. So we've taken our money from the government and we've done our best to make it go as far as we can, and long may it continue.
Now open to questions from the committee on the report. Do I have any? Oh, Councillor Stewart, didn't see you there.
Quiet lad hiding in the corner. Thank you, Sue. I've been following this with great interest. You say that 92% uptake. What's happened to the other 8% who haven't taken it up there? And it was good to hear you talk about the co-op there. Co-ops in lots of communities throughout the area, and I understand it was probably an IT problem with the co-op, and this is why we're having to go down the lines of having the gift cards. I'm disappointed in the co-op. I have contacted the head office about that. Schools schemes, are they working? And do we monitor those? Or get many complaints with the individual schools ones? And I look forward to hearing from Emma as well about the activities in Prudder.
Thank you, Councillor Stewart. Yes, in terms of the 8% that didn't take up the data, didn't take up the vouchers, again, I think the data that we received from the HUG system was that Northumberland had the highest uptake in the country of anybody that was actually using the voucher system. But the way that the data works in terms of free school meals and families transferring from tax credit to the single payment meant that there is a bit of lag in the data. So some of the people that potentially were eligible within our data set had actually moved on to different benefits, but we still issued the vouchers to those families at that period of time. And the schools themselves also, you know, some families said, we don't need the money any longer, please recycle the money. So we did have some feedback in some areas where family circumstances had changed. They were then in employment or receiving additional income and didn't feel that they actually needed the vouchers and felt that it was better to recycle them within the system. In terms of the co-op voucher system, that is absolutely correct. They didn't have the software or the systems in order to be able to become part of a national, more wider voucher system. So again, as a local authority, not only for this scheme, but for other activities within Northumberland communities together, the local authority purchased local gift cards from the co-op so that families still had access to local supermarkets as well. So we worked around that in order to make sure that our families and young people still had access to that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Ball? Yep.
Thanks, Chair. So I just want to first say thank you to Marcus Rashford, the Right to Food campaign, who've kept the pressure on to keep this scheme going and the help and support that many families across Northumberland obviously need at this time and beyond. It's not just a COVID issue. This is the right to food is really important, and we need to keep that at the front of everybody's minds as well. So just with regards to the take up of the vouchers, obviously there is, with regards to post-16 learners and the care leavers over the Easter holidays, has anybody actually been in contact to find out why the people that haven't used them, why they haven't used them? Is it a case that they haven't, maybe it's sat in an outbox, like a junk filter somewhere, or they've just not been able to access the shops that they've been issued? Has there been any follow-up with the people that haven't used it? And also, with regards to the free school meals and the holiday provisions, are they open to anyone, or is it just people on free school meals? Because obviously a number of people that aren't entitled to free school meals are still struggling with furlough, etc. Thank you.
In terms of the holiday activity and the free school meals, it is targeted, but it is open, I believe, and Emma will be able to give you more detail on that, but I believe it's been open more widely. And perhaps the numbers that you see in the report from Easter, identifies, so many were actually on free school meals, but it was open to others. I think that the challenge is in managing the numbers, and I think the team are very much working on how they can target that, but also open it up to those at need for the summer holiday period. But more than happy to get you some further details on that directly from Emma. In terms of opening up the wider school meals scheme, I think you'll see it's where families have been given the vouchers So very much when children are in school, the contact details are with the families and the vouchers go to the families. In other services, it's where the children, the young people themselves, so where you see Northumberland College, for instance, that voucher is given to the individual child. So I think it has been more of a challenge to get the children to get the uptake. So in discussions with some of those service areas, it has been more about actually providing money rather than vouchers. So I think that's one thing that we have learned. The approach for families and children in schools works very, very well with the vouchers, and perhaps a bit more flexibility around where children are receiving the funding themselves, and very much what you're saying, a learning point about how they would like to receive the funding. Should that continue is something that we would definitely look at moving forward. Thank you.
Councillor Dunn.
Thank you, Chair. Just with regard to the additional element for parents to put forward towards the cost of utility bills and that sort of thing, do I have any sort of breakdown as to where these applications came from, where that money went to on a sort of a ward or a geographical basis, I suppose I'm getting at? And also, I think there was sort of a discretionary element of this fund as well. Just like some information on how that part of that went. I know I had a couple of referrals from my own ward, so I'm just interested to see how it went around the rest of the county.
Yes, Councillor Dunn. That the discretionary element of the grant was managed by Northumberland Communities Together, again with a local authority Facebook campaign, encouraging parents, young people, families that were struggling to contact the team to receive some support. So again, vouchers around fuel. Again, winter coats, I think at one point were also offered. I haven't got an exact breakdown, but it is something that we could get the information from Northumberland Communities Together in terms of wards and the level of I suppose expenditure around fuel poverty, etc. as well. That's something we'd certainly provide you with the detail outside of the meeting.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, just one from me. We recently ran a promotion to encourage more people to sign up to free school meals who are eligible. So where are we about how that's gone, and what future plans do we have to push that?
So yeah, in terms of free school meals, as you rightly said, we did run a campaign very much along the lines of the voucher system, encouraging as many families as possible to apply for free school meals. The numbers continue to increase, although have really plateaued, I would say, over the last couple of months. But again, it's part of our standard communication strategy, and we'll continue to do that through schools directly, as well as more generally with the local authority. Again, it's something our individual schools very much encourage, again, because of the increased funding it brings into schools around pupil premium. So again, we work very closely with our schools. Very often schools, I think, complete the forms for families very much as well in terms of supporting them. So we will continue to do the things that we've always done to ensure we get the best uptake of free school meals that we possibly can across Northumberland.
So then, I don't see any other questions or any other hands. So, oh, sorry, Councillor Dunn, go on again.
Just a really quick one. Did we actually spend all the allocation that we got from central government for this? We're not having to repay anything back or anything like that.
We're just reconciling the accounts now in terms, so again, I'll get you that information, but I'm pretty sure we have spent it all, exactly as Councillor Renner Thompson said. We have increased at every holiday period where possible the voucher allocation to ensure that we weren't handing any of the funding back.
Thank you. Something that stuck in my mind from what you said, Sue, over 5,000 hours of fun activities. Got a reporter in the back, that should be the front page lead. Over 5,000 hours of fun in Northumberland, why not? Right, so we have the recommendations there to note the contents of the report. but also to note the strategy, the rollout of the benefits of activity for young people throughout the Holiday Activity Fund across Northumberland. So I think we've covered both of those points there and had a very comprehensive discussion. In any additional requests for information that will be sent out. So based on that, can I please have a show of hands that we support the report? That is unanimous. Thank you very much for that. We're now moving on to the work programme, which Chris Angus is going to take us through.
Thanks, Chair. The work programme is a document to show members what is coming to the committee over the next few months. It's an opportunity for members to suggest anything they would like to be included on the work programme within the terms of reference, or alternatively members can contact either myself or Councillor Daly as chair to put something onto the work programme. There's 2 reports due at the next meeting, the Care Leavers Action Plan and a School Forums Summary of Decisions, which was requested by the committee, and that'll be at the next meeting. But other than that, it's just for members to note, unless there's anything anybody wants to suggest. No? Okay.
Can I also just touch on about scrutiny training as well? If we can just touch on that.
Yeah, sorry. I'm talking to HR and the Centre for Governance and Scrutiny about developing some training for members on what scrutiny is, how to deliver effective scrutiny. And once we've got the details of that, there'll be something coming out for members to sign up to.
So again, just on that work programme, I am really keen that this is a member-led committee. So if you've got ideas for scrutiny, then please let's bring them forward and let's look at where we can timetable them and where we can also do some task and finish. I think we can do 2 or 3 task and finish groups over this year. And I'll just remind members, if you haven't already seen it, please read the task and finish group which Councillor Swinburne set up on exclusions, which I think was absolutely instrumental in dealing with one of the issues that we had a number of years ago in the county and had a transformative effect. So what we do here does have an impact. So please be part of helping to shape and frame what this work programme looks like. So thank you very much for that, Chris. Urgent business, I've only got 1 item that I'm aware of, but I'm happy to take anything from the floor. 1 item is the September meeting. We're needing to move that to a 9 o'clock start, not 10 o'clock. That's simply to accommodate a meeting which needs to happen a bit later on. And so just note that for your diaries. I have 2 people who are indicating to speak. I've got Councillor Swinburne and John Sanderson. So Mark Swinburne first, please.
Chair, I alluded to a question that I wanted to raise earlier on. Is it okay if I bring this in now? I was just wondering what's happening about capital build at Northumberland College. I'm aware that there's government money available, and we've discussed Northumberland College previously. I just wondered if I could raise that, please.
Thank you. Kath McAvoy-Cough, if you could take that one, please.
What I would say is we'll bring a report in relation to that potentially in the not too distant future. I can't really say very much about that at this point in time, but there is some activity that I think would be that we will want to advise people about moving forward. But at this point in time, I wouldn't want to say that because it's not ours to discuss at this point.
Okay, so we'll look forward to that report. Thank you. John.
Just a couple of simple ones. On page 38 and 39, the page number has blocked out the dates. So if you could just clarify the date of the September meeting and the April meeting, please.
Chris, could you pick up on that one? Got better eyesight than me.
The meeting will be on the 2nd of September. And what was the other one? The April one. Yeah. And it's the 7th of April.
So there we go. First facts over of this new administration. Thank you very much. Been very challenging, very good. I hope the new members have enjoyed it. You will enjoy this committee. It is very good. And thank you to all the officers who've attended and answered so comprehensively. Thank you very much for attending today.